306 people sailed on the USS Cyclops. Not one body ever washed ashore. Not one plank of wreckage. Not one distress call. More than a century later, the United States Navy still cannot tell you what killed her. Welcome to Last Known Position. This is the story of a ship that was never built to carry what she carried, sent out with a broken engine, under a captain nobody in her crew trusted, straight into a storm one witness called Unsurvivable, and then erased so completely that a century of navies, divers, and treasure hunters have found nothing at all. The working theory, 108 years on, is brutally simple. A coal ship loaded with ore she was never designed to hold, crippled by her own engine, sailing alone into weather that killed ships built stronger than she was. On May 7th, 1910, the William Cramp & Sons yard in Philadelphia launched a collier named Cyclops, one of 4 sister ships built to haul coal to the fleet. She was a big ship for her era, better than 19,000 tons of displacement, more than 500 feet stem to stern, but bigness didn't fix what her design brief left out. Coal is light and forgiving. It shifts, but it doesn't fight back. Ore is neither. That distinction, buried in a shipyard's design brief, is the failure this episode keeps circling back to. Command went to a lieutenant commander named George Worley, and he would never leave her. Worley was born Johann Wickman in Hanover, Germany, and at 16 he'd jumped ship in San Francisco, taken an American name, and worked his way up from a Barbary Coast saloon to a naval commission. His crews called him the Damned Dutchman. They described a captain who cursed and berated his men, who once chased an ensign with a pistol, who inspected his own ship in long underwear and a derby hat. He wanted respect he never fully got, and he ran his ship like a man daring someone to challenge him. For 7 years, that eccentricity cost nobody anything. Cyclops coaled at Newport, carried supplies to the Baltic, and in 1914 supported the American occupation of Veracruz, earning her a formal commendation from the State Department. When America entered the war in 1917, she was formally commissioned into the Navy, ran a convoy to France, then settled into a routine of ferrying coal to British warships patrolling off Brazil. It was steady work. It was also about to change. The Cyclops had 3 sisters. 2 of them, Proteus and Nereus, would vanish without a trace 23 years later, carrying the same kind of ore on the same kind of route. Keep that in mind because a coincidence stops being a coincidence the 3rd time it happened. In January 1918, Cyclops left Norfolk, Virginia for Rio de Janeiro, carrying nearly 10,000 tons of coal for the American Patrol Squadron stationed there. She delivered it without incident. The trouble started on the trip home. For the return voyage, her holds were filled with manganese ore bound for Baltimore steel mills, ore that would end up in American shells and armor. She took on 10,800 long tons of it, well past a hold rated for roughly 8,000. And while that cargo was being loaded, Worley did something almost inexplicable. He arrested his own executive officer, the one man aboard who actually understood how to stow ore safely, over what witnesses described as a trivial dispute. The loading finished under officers who had never done it before. A later inspection would find the ore secured to the standards of the day. It would not find anyone who could say the ship was properly balanced for it. A junior officer named Conrad Nervig had sailed the outbound leg to Rio and would later write the fullest account of what he saw aboard her, including that arrest, but he transferred off the ship before she turned north again. He survived by paperwork, not judgment. Cyclops made one more stop at Bahia, Brazil to top off coal. There, a survey board discovered a cracked cylinder in her starboard engine, a real, documented mechanical failure. The board recommended repairs. Cyclops sailed anyway, now limited to roughly 10 knots on a single working engine, hauling more weight than she was built to carry, with the one officer who knew ore now confined below decks instead of on watch. 2 weeks out, low in the water, she made an unscheduled stop at Bridgetown, Barbados, 1,800 nautical miles short of home. Sailors on shore noticed she was riding below her own load line. Worley told the American consul he needed bunker coal and, oddly, asked for money to finish the trip. He took on more coal, stacked on top of the ore, already overloading her. The stop that was supposed to lighten the ship's burden made it heavier instead. Whatever was wrong with the Cyclops, by March of 1918, the cargo, the engine, the captain, the choices, none of it was going to get fixed. It was only going to get worse, and there was no one left aboard qualified to stop it. On March 4th, 1918, Cyclops left Barbados for Baltimore. That is the last confirmed contact anyone has. A line about fair weather and all being well gets repeated in nearly every retelling of this story, but no primary Navy record actually confirms she ever sent it. What is certain is worse than any last message. No distress call went out. Not that day, not any day after. 5 days later, a documented gale tore through the shipping lanes off the Virginia Capes, winds recorded at 40 to 60 knots, gale warnings posted the length of the coast. A tanker called the Amolco was caught in the same weather. Her captain, C.E. Hilliard, would later say it was the worst storm he had seen in his career, and that a ship loaded with manganese ore could not have survived it. He was one of the last people in a position to know, and he never actually saw the Cyclops that day. A rumoured sighting by his own ship was later denied by Hilliard himself, and doesn't hold up geographically. He was describing the weather, he wasn't describing a body. Cyclops was due into the Chesapeake on March 13th. The date came. Nothing came with it. No radio call, no flare, no lifeboat, no oil slick on the water. The Navy waited, the way navies do when a ship goes quiet in wartime, hoping a delay was just a delay. By mid-April, the wait became public. The New York Times ran the headline, "Collier overdue a month," and for the first time the country learned a Navy ship carrying more than 300 people, the exact count is disputed between 306 and 309, but no version of it is small, had simply stopped existing. French and American ships searched the routes between Barbados and the American coast for weeks. They found nothing. Not a scrap of the ship. Secretary of the Navy Josephus Daniels put it plainly in his annual report. There has been no more baffling mystery in the annals of the Navy than the disappearance, last March, of the USS Cyclops. There has not been a trace of the vessel, and long continued and vigilant search of the entire region proved utterly futile. 2 years after that, a trade magazine summed up the entire case in one sentence. Not a bit of the wreckage, nor sign of any description, had been found. On June 1st, 1918, roughly 90 days after Barbados, Cyclops was formally struck from the Navy list. Every soul aboard was declared dead. The declaration is credited in several accounts to a young Assistant Secretary of the Navy named Franklin Roosevelt. The Navy's suspicion, in the absence of any wreck, fell on the one man who'd always made people uneasy. Because Worley had been born in Germany and America was at war with Germany, Naval Intelligence opened a loyalty investigation into her own captain, fed partly by a consular report of rumoured disturbances and confinement aboard ship. The investigation found no evidence of disloyalty and no evidence of mutiny. After the war, investigators went further and checked captured German naval records directly. No U-boat, no German raider ever claimed an attack on Cyclops. No German vessel is documented anywhere near her route. The enemy, whatever else was true, did not do this. What was left was the theory this episode opened with, and it got a second terrible confirmation 23 years later. In the winter of 1941, Cyclops' sister ship Proteus vanished without a trace, hauling bauxite ore on a similar route. Weeks after that, her other sister Nereus vanished the same way, carrying the same kind of cargo. Neither loss involved a German submarine. That much the Navy could rule out both times. 3 sister ships, the same design, the same category of dense mineral cargo, and 3 complete disappearances. That is no longer a coincidence anyone can respectably argue. One later Navy authority, Rear Admiral George Van Dors, went further, arguing that years of corrosive coal cargo had already been eating away at the ship's structural steel long before she ever took on a pound of ore. It is a design flaw that never got fixed, because nobody ever proved exactly what needed fixing. People have gone looking for her ever since. In 1968, a Navy diver named Dean Hawes found an unusual wreck off Cape Charles, Virginia. A bridge sitting on steel stilts. Gear that looked like a collier's. For years, people assumed it was Cyclops. In 1974, Navy divers examined it directly and ruled it out. In 1983, Clive Cussler's search team dove the same site and confirmed it was a different ship entirely. A Dominican Republic salvager claimed to have found her in 2017. The artifacts he recovered were British marked china and doorknobs, nothing an American Navy collier would carry. A viral article in the 2020s claimed the mystery solved at 1,300 feet. It named no researchers, no institution, and no Navy has ever confirmed it. As of this year, no wreck identified as Cyclops has ever been found. In 2018, the Navy's own historian, Samuel Cox, published the closest thing to an official answer this case will ever get, that the design flaw, the failing engine, and the documented storm made more sense to him than the sea monster and methane explosion theories that tabloids floated for decades. It stopped short of a verdict. It has to nobody ever found a wreck to confirm it. Maritime archaeologist James Delgado has called Cyclops probably the last great mystery left unresolved in American naval history, and after everything the record does and doesn't say, it's hard to argue with him. Here is what the record actually supports. Cyclops was a coal ship asked to carry ore she wasn't built for, missing her one officer who knew how to load it, running on one damaged engine into a storm severe enough to sink better ships than her. Nothing about that requires a sea monster or a saboteur. It only requires bad decisions compounding on each other until the ocean was the only thing left standing. A Navy veteran and Maryland Congressman, Andy Harris, said it simply decades later. He felt a duty to honor the crew members who never returned home to Baltimore and the families they left behind. Her last known position is not a set of coordinates on a chart. It's a harbour. Carlisle Bay, Bridgetown, Barbados, March 4th, 1918. The last place on Earth anyone can prove the USS Cyclops still existed. Everything past that point belongs to the sea. 306 people, give or take, are still out there somewhere along the route to Baltimore, and the ocean hasn't given any of them back. If you know a disappearance we haven't covered yet, tell us in the comments. We're always looking for the next one. Let me know if you'd like me to retry writing this to o2.script.draft.txt. I'll need file write permission granted for that.